Hello. Good morning. Hope you're all awake and ready. I'm Christie, and today, as Jeremy said, the talk theme is lost. I think it's something that we've all felt at one point in our lives, and I'm certainly no stranger to it. But first, I guess I wanted to show you quickly a bit of the work that we do in a video reel. So for the past nearly 3 years, I've been running a small design studio called Pitch, as I've mentioned, here in Melbourne. We work with brands, agencies and institutions to create new forms of storytelling experiences. This often results in 3D or interactive content for branding initiatives, marketing campaigns, sometimes events, and sometimes special projects, which kind of is a blanket term for projects that don't fit into any of those categories. We're a pretty small team of 3. This is a photo of myself, Taylor, and Chris, who's here today. And sometimes 4. We have an internship program as well. We like to keep it that way. We keep our core team relatively small and agile, and it kind of expands and contracts based on the projects we take on, essentially. This is our little sunny studio in the city, just around the corner at Mitchell House. We share with a bunch of other people as well. And these are just some of the clients that we've been really lucky to work with over the past couple of years. It's kind of a mix of like lifestyle, fashion, some tech brands, and music as well. Our work is pretty experimental. It's sometimes quite abstract. And we also, as Jeremy mentioned, we do like to work with emerging technologies to achieve interesting and a lot of the time experimental results. That's me on the beach with some augmented reality that we did with Snapchat recently. It's another video that I wanted to show you. And I guess we create pretty immersive, enchanting visual landscapes that can entice you a little bit. Excitingly, this year we actually launched a new arm of the studio, which is called Pitch Portal. And it aims to take a deeper look at the way humans connect and communicate through digital culture. These are, I guess, presented through a number of different things: short films, interactive experiences. We're working on some events, some workshops, and we also have some papers coming out in 2020. So essentially, we're a design studio and now a creative lab. We have the flexibility of being able to combine visual communication, creative strategy, research and critical thinking for organizations and ourselves sometimes. I guess everything that we do is in a more alternative format. So that's enough about me. So as they say, I started thinking about this talk and what I was going to present to you. I genuinely felt a bit lost. I was putting together some advice that I might have for creative people, from business people, from all different sort of backgrounds, skill sets, demographics. And to be honest, it just all felt pretty overwhelming, to be honest. I guess I remembered that one, I'm not a trained psychologist, and I can only sort of, explain myself through my personal experiences of loss. We're all human, so at some level I feel like we have very similar experiences. And I guess this talk is a way for me to sort of contextualize these experiences and how I've managed to get by, and also help normalize these feelings. In my opinion, I do really believe that feeling lost is a mindset. It's simply a set of pressures and expectations that we put on ourselves. It's a way that our brains tell us to second guess. And unfortunately, being uncomfortable is uncomfortable, and sometimes that doesn't feel good. But I do believe that we experience this all throughout our lives, and it's not always supposed to feel good. It's actually part of the human experience. Another, I guess, relatively human experience is writing lists. And I started putting together a list of things that made me feel uncomfortable or fearful or uncertain or unequipped or confused. And whether you're, I guess, a business owner or not, I feel like this is something that most of you can relate to. So here's my list of big fears. What if I don't want to be a designer anymore? Am I even a good designer? Do my teammates like my management style? And better yet, do they like me at all? What happens if I lose a client and I can't pay rent? It's a very real fear. What am I going to do when I retire? Will I get bored? Why am I never happy with my work? And my personal favorite, is the world going to collapse soon? How am I going to survive an apocalypse? I don't even know how to build a file. I guess as a person that deals with very high levels of anxiety, this list literally could go on and on and on and on until it becomes way too much. You start to feel lost and confused until eventually you're confused about literally everything in your life. It's sort of this complete lack of self-control. But these are narratives that I fabricate inside my mind. Most of these fears, hopefully, won't ever come true. And it's this uncertainty that, is part of the human experience. And it's, we try really, really hard to fight these urges. But it is in this mindset that I personally have been able to create really fantastic, creatively fulfilling work. So taking a step back, in 2011, when I was in uni, I started a digital publication, which was called Pitch Zine. Don't ask me why I started a publication. I honestly am not a very good writer, but something felt really right. It felt very intuitive, and I wanted an opportunity to share these incredible artists that I was discovering online with my peers, my friends, and my family. And I guess being a millennial, it was probably like a very typical thing to do with my time, start an internet magazine. We interviewed some incredibly creative people. We highlighted small brands that we genuinely cared about. And being the editor, it was a chance for me to kind of curate the content how I would want to see it and what I would want to read about. And eventually people started coming to us for branded content and projects as well. After a couple of years of operating, we launched a print publication, which is just a print version of the online magazine, which was, successfully crowdfunded through an online campaign. I guess for me, it was like just the right amount of gratification to confirm that, yes, even though I studied to be a graphic designer and that's what I wanted to do with my life, that I was going to pursue arts publishing. Very different. After we launched the print, it slowly snuck into focus that we actually weren't making a lot of money. How were we going to sustain a business if everyone is claiming that print is dead? Do I even know what I'm doing? All these ideas and thoughts started flooding my mind. Why do I feel so lost? I, again, lost that lack of control. But the truth of the matter is I was just feeling uncomfortable. I didn't have a traditional background in publishing or writing. I knew that I was good at something, but it didn't feel like this particular industry was for me. And I loved supporting the people that I cared about. It was a really exciting opportunity for me to put my work out there. But unfortunately, because it wasn't my own work, I sort of had this lack of creative fulfillment. So I took a 2-year hiatus. I was working during that hiatus. I went out into the world and I tried my hand at being a full-time designer. First freelance, and I did a bit of in-house work. I did some agency stints. But none of these positions felt really right for me. I still felt incredibly lost. I knew that working inside a larger, more structured environment would inevitably work to my advantage within the industry. I couldn't stand the guilt about working overtime. I didn't have time to spend on my own projects outside of that. I didn't particularly like working in really large teams. I felt it was more collaborative, it was more intimate. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to really experiment in any way, which is a big part of what I do. I felt so instinctively that this path wasn't right for me, and I just genuinely felt pretty confused. sorry, that's not supposed to have music. I took a long, hard look at the work environments that I'd chosen. I talked a lot to my partner, I talked a lot to my friends, I bitched a lot. I went down some really dark paths of self-reflection. But in the end, I decided to, say, fuck it, I'm gonna go out on my own and do my own thing. So next minute, I'm launching a design studio. I didn't have the slightest idea what our mission would be. I just knew that this was a risk that I was almost obliged to take. And this is where Pitch Studios came in, and everything sort of just fell into place and felt really right. I no longer felt lost. It was my calling, as they say. I started a studio with virtually no money or savings to put into the business, but thankfully I sort of built up quite an extensive portfolio of work that I had enough to kind of get started. And funnily enough, I did have the old Instagram account, which was sitting at 85,000 followers, which was enough to kind of push us in terms of marketing. I figured that it was meant to be. I guess I don't want to necessarily just stand here and brag about my business, but we have been really lucky to work with some incredibly big companies like Nike and Snapchat and the Tate, just to name a few. That's me at a workshop we did last year. But I guess it's through these low moments in my career that I've been able to feel this sense of uncertainty and uncomfortableness, and I've used that energy to my advantage. It was really sort of the kick up the butt that I needed in life and in my career. So I guess almost 3 years on, we're sort of back to present day. I still feel lost all the time, but I've learned to be uncomfortable in this sort of uncomfortable state. You just have to sort of take life as it comes and let it roll over you. You can't always be in control. And when running a business, there's always going to be this ultimate level of sacrifice that you have to give. There's this lack of control that you may have to give up on, and particularly if you work inside a team. And so I wanted to share some takeaways of what I've been feeling over the past couple of years and sort of what I've taught myself. And these are a few pieces that I've reminded myself in those low moments that it's all going to work out. Iteration is key. I'm never going to have the perfect business, never going to have the perfect design, process, strategy, and that's fine. It's about iterating on those goals and layering those and building on our own achievements and working further towards that. Life is all about sort of the journey and the growth. Permaflux, which is a new term that a studio over in London, Superimpose, coined. In essence, their concept is about the entire world is in a constant state of flux and change. Of course, we're going to feel lost, right? We operate in a collective sense of chaos and anxiety due to the constant flow of technologies and commodities. But for me, I guess it's normalizing this attitude that's going to really create fulfillment in our lives. We can finally relate to one another and acknowledge the fact that the world is shifting and maybe sometimes burning. It's not a death sentence. I guess reminding yourself that this feeling is just part of the human experience, and it may not be easy, but again, it's not supposed to be. How boring would life be if we didn't have challenges and nothing to inspire you? It personally doesn't sound like a place that I would want to live in. What now? I guess I'm going to move forward. I'm going to continue to move on in this state of flux and change and probably feel lost from time to time. But again, it's all about that human experience. In Pitch World, we have some exciting projects in the pipeline. We're going to Art Basel next week in Miami as part of a project we're doing with Gucci and Snapchat. And then in terms of Pitch Portal, we're doing some workshops at Pause Fest next year, and we're also presenting something for Melbourne Knowledge Week. That's kind of it. Thank you.
We got plenty of time for some questions if you want to just kind of open it up and hear more about kind of Pitch and Christie's experience setting up or anything else. Hands up, anyone? Yes.
What's inspiring you at the moment?
What's inspiring? Hello. What's inspiring me? That's a very good question. I guess I look to the world around us. Thematically, a lot of the work that we do explores digital culture and humans' connectivity and communication through digital culture. So I guess a lot of like sort of the research that we do through design briefs is sort of focusing on that. So I'd say that's probably an inspiration. I wouldn't say like technology is an inspiration, but it's certainly influencing the way that we work. So I hope that answers it.
Anyone else?
I'm wondering, could you describe a moment that you feel very depressed in your work?
Moment that I feel very depressed. For me, I'm not the kind of person that can work on a really, really tight deadline. I find that my best creative self is when I have more of a lead time. I have more time to like ruminate. So sometimes when I get a brief in, that's, it needs to be turned around in 2 weeks, for example. That's when I feel at most lost. And it's really hard to get out of those circumstances for sure. And I think it's about bringing in a small team and collaborating. And that's a big part of the process, is like bouncing ideas off other people. For me anyway, I like to work with other people. That's working by myself almost always is not the answer for me. Yeah.
How did you find that transition from managing a print sort of based project with your magazine to working with global brands in something completely different?
Yeah, it was a big change for sure. I think my time working as a designer in agencies, for example, having that experience or at least like proximity to large brands helped for sure. But I feel that the brands that I have worked with that are quite large, like for instance Nike, it feels super intimate even though it is a big brand. And it's been, in my experience, it's all about sort of the relationships and it's how you foster those more. And in those experiences, everyone was very delighted to work with us, and of course we were as well. But shifting from being print focused, and my background also as a designer was, when I was at uni, was specifically print focused. It was a big change to move into a digital platform for sure. But I think overall, it's just sort of doing the research outside of your work hours, but then you also do learn on the job. So a lot of it was like learning through the experiencing. Yeah.
It's like digital technology and the way that people communicate through those mediums is an inspiration for you. That, I suppose, that can feed into feeling lost for a lot of people, because it just gets slammed with
Absolutely.
information all the time. Do you find it's a bit of a, in working with feelings of being lost and working with digital technology and communications and inspiration, is that kind of, those two kind of orbit around each other and feed off each other?
Yeah, it's very cyclical for sure. I think it's no surprise to all of us that even though we are so connected, we also feel very lost and lonely. And so that's something that we're not trying to fix that necessarily. I don't know if we can fix that, but like personally. But I think it's definitely something that comes into play when we're thinking about thematically how we want to approach this. A lot of the time, the work we do is about like emotions and pulling in like a mood or a feeling and how we can kind of subvert that almost. Yeah.
Any other questions? Time for one more? Yeah.
Any tips on a successful crowdfunding campaign?
Crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Ooh. I've had mixed reviews about crowdfunding. We actually, when we did it, we launched the first campaign, which was unsuccessful. We had just missed out, I think, I can't remember exactly, but I think our goal was too high. It was at like 12,000 and we only got 5, for example. And then when we launched it again, we also took our learnings from the first time and realized that like, okay, we need to push this heavier on social, which was a big part of our campaign. Unfortunately, if you don't have that social following, it's a little bit difficult. And then I think when we relaunched it, we learned from the previous campaign and we'd sort of realized, okay, we need to push it on social, we need to talk to more people. We spoke to the company, it was Possible. We spoke to Possible and I think they ended up featuring us on one of their like blogs or something like that. In terms of it being successful, the video is really important. I know like everyone says that. We actually had an animation, which historically doesn't always work as well, but I think because when we launched it, we had a very specific aesthetic and I guess we were a little bit more anonymous in a sense, so it was less about the story about who I was or who we were working with. It was more about the feeling or the aesthetic, or I guess the stories that you wanted to read in the publication. I hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Let's give another hand to Christie. Thank you.
Thank you.